Welcome to the Fantasy Forecast. I'm John Romero of the Washington Post. It is week 5 of the NFL season, so lots of decisions to make for fantasy football owners this weekend. We've got bye weeks, we've got injuries, we've got guys not living up to expectations, as many of you know. For those of you who need advice, want to follow me on Twitter, my handle is at John_J_Romero. Now, turning back real quickly to my picks from last week, just to give you evidence that sometimes I actually know what I'm talking about. Let's start with my fringe starters from last week. I recommended LeGarrette Blount. He came up pretty big, 136 yards on the ground, one reception for 20 yards. I also recommended Bilal Powell of the Jets. He had a phenomenal game. And I also recommended in my lottery picks Andre Ellington, that he could be a nice play last week. And sure enough, he had 8 receptions, 96 yards. And the one I cautioned against and said, you may not have the depth to sit him, but he's not playing very well. He's not got a good history versus the matchup he was facing. That was Amari Cooper against the Broncos, and he did not deliver much. So going forward, Cooper owners got to be a little skeptical of what he's going to bring in the next few weeks, especially without David Carr and that Oakland offense. Now, turning attention to week 5, my picks this week, we'll start off with Randall Cobb in Green Bay. Now, for the record, I'm definitely playing Cobb if Devontae Adams is sitting. I think that's a no-brainer. He still warrants some consideration if Adams plays. Green Bay passes the ball a lot. They spread the ball around a lot. The Cowboys sure looked vulnerable defensively last week against the Rams. Green Bay's had extra rest. So even if Adams is a go, with bye weeks and injuries and guys underachieving around the league, Cobb may have some appeal. But a definite play if Adams cannot play this week. He's suffering from a concussion from last week's hit, and he may not suit up. So give Cobb some consideration for this week's lineup. Moving on to my second pick, it's really kind of a group effort. I'm kind of all in on the Dolphins this week. Maybe not so much on Jay Cutler, but I'm kind of rooting for his success because I have Devontae Parker in our league. I'm sure there's many others that have Jarvis Landry, and those who own Jay Ajayi obviously have been disappointed so far. You thought they would break out in last week's game in London against the Saints, who have been not very good defensively. That didn't happen. It was not a very good result at all. They got shut out. Now they're facing a Titans defense that gave up 57 points last week. So I guess I'm rolling the dice on all these guys. You kind of have to if you were depending on the Miami tailback for elite production. But Parker and Landry seem to have a lot of upside going into this week. So I'm going to gamble Miami breaks out of its kind of a slump and puts up some points and puts up some results in fantasy football. Now, my third selection is Duke Johnson of the Cleveland Browns. He suddenly seems to kind of be displacing Isaiah Crowell as the main back in Cleveland. Not so much from a ground game standpoint. Crowell's still getting the bulk of those carries, but Johnson's getting some touches at the goal line, and he's getting a number of targets as a receiver out of the backfield. So that should continue, and I definitely like this week against the Jets. I think Johnson's a nice play, and he could be continue that going forward. Now, last but not least, my lottery ticket selection for this weekend, we're going to go with Alex Collins of the Baltimore Ravens. In a vaguely similar situation to Duke Johnson and Isaiah Crowell in Cleveland, the Baltimore backfield's kind of been a mess. Danny Woodhead has been injured and will continue to be out for a few weeks. It's been a kind of a three-headed monster of Terrence West and Javorius Allen and Alex Collins. West doesn't seem to have it going very well. Collins is not getting a lot of touches, but is doing a lot with them. The Achilles heel for Collins is that he's coughed up the ball a couple times. That said, he should get the opportunities this weekend, and so long as he doesn't cough up the ball, not only do I think he can produce this weekend, but he could become a mainstay in the offense. He just can't fumble. So that's going to wrap it up for us in this Week 5 Fantasy Cheat Sheet. I'm John Romero of the Washington Post. We hope you join us next week for the Fantasy Forecast. Until then, good luck, and we'll see you next week.